I'm in day 3 of a juice cleanse.
Yeah.
I've had like 18 juices the past 3 days. That's all I've ate.
Yeah.
I didn't even eat. I just drank.
Does bourbon qualify as part of the juice cleanse?
I don't know. I haven't had any alcohol, but I'm scared to try because I haven't had any solid food. So,
it's a dangerous game.
I could get sloppy off one.
Hey everyone, just like last week, we've got some more news to cover before we kick off this week's podcast. As you all know, we are partnered with the Kentucky Derby Museum to bring the Legend series to this podcast. They are giving an opportunity for all of our listeners that want to come and watch these happen in person to have a coupon code. Before we get into that, make sure that you know that on February 2016th, it's going to be Kyle and Wes Henderson from Angels Envy. On March 15th, it's going to be Fred and Freddie No of Jim Beam. And on March 29th, we're going to have Evan Colsveen of Willett Distillery on. Now, if you want to come and see these in person, we're going to be there. It's going to be a long time until these are published on the podcast, so you should probably come. You can meet us, you can hang out, and you can listen to some good stories while Fred Minnick is the MC. It's code BP50, and you can go to derbymuseum.org/legend series. Now, this episode really touches on a lot of different things. You know, we talk about barrel picks in general. We hit again on the Crown Royal Mash bill that was a follow-up to the last roundtable we had. And we kind of also want to go into trying to understand why people chase Blantons, or is it just a false sense of shortage? And speaking of barrel picks, for our Patreon members, there is a sign-up form to get yourself, if you're interested in getting a bottle from a Buffalo Trace from the Bourbon Community Roundtable barrel that we had picked out that we actually talk about on this episode. In addition, there is a new thing that kind of came to light that happened this past week, is that we have an opportunity to do an upcoming barrel split of a Maker's Mark 46 private selection. And this is going to be, as well as going to be available to Patreon supporters as well. You can go in there, let me know if you want to commit to a bottle, and we can put you down. I have no idea what is going to happen here if this we can keep this pace up, getting more barrels come in, but it sure is fun. Now, make sure you do support the show, especially if you like what you hear. It really does help keep this going. Make sure you're also subscribing on iTunes and YouTube and Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And always enjoy this week's episode.
Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof, and the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select 2 doors at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon, the number one podcast of bourbon. We are here with the 17th edition of the Bourbon Community Roundtable. It is a fan favorite. It is a crowd favorite. We've got 30 viewers on. We'll probably creep up to 50 relatively here soon. We got to wait for Blake to bring his Bourboner fan base here at some point. So it will happen. It usually does. But this is going to be a good episode. We've actually got a pretty jam-packed list of news because it seems a little odd. And Ryan, I'll kind of get your take on this. It seems like this is the kind of year when not a lot of news really happens, right? It's something that it's a pretty slow time of the year, right?
Yeah, there's like pretty much nothing going on. My father-in-law, he always like, what's coming out? And I'm like, nothing. Just hang on. But that's just this time of year, January, man. It's winter break. You got to do juice cleanses and stuff this time of year.
So you can prepare your liver for
summer and fall.
Yeah, I mean, because there's only a few things that happen in spring, and I think we'll have to get the guys from Breaking Bourbon on for another podcast here that we'll just talk about all the kind of new releases that you can expect in the upcoming year. But yeah, this is also the time of year that we also end up kind of making up our own news as we go. Like what is things that are pet peeved about us that we can kind of talk about and whatever for a little bit. So this is going to be one of those episodes. So we got a little bit of the news, but then we're going to kind of talk about it's going to be a lot of opinions and stuff like that.
It's so like a summer show for people that cover basketball and football. During the our winters the summer, vice versa, whatever.
Yeah, like how much can you talk about the NBA when the NBA is off season for these 6 months, right?
Right, pretty much.
So we've got
to try. We are going to try.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a full house tonight, minus one of the regulars of the Bourbon Roundtable, which is Carrie. But we've got a stand-in of both of the guys from Breaking Bourbon. Well, I should say 2/3 of the guys from Breaking Bourbon, the ones that are usually here, made it tonight.
The ones that aren't camera shy.
Yeah, there we go.
Hey, throwing Eric under the bus.
I think Carrie's out, man. He doesn't show up for the pick. He bails tonight. I'm done.
Who are you talking about?
For Carrie, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, who? Right? Who is it?
Put it off the island.
Who's Suburbia?
No.
All right, so Breaking Bourbon, you guys take it away. Introduce yourselves.
Sure. This is Jordan. And this is Nick from breakingbourbon.com. Check us out online on social media. We got a big article that went live today, new 2018 whiskeys. Check it out. Some of that stuff on there is confirmed. Some of it is new. Some of it is kind of updates for the annual stuff. And then some of it is kind of a little bit of speculation with some hunches that we might see those things get released. So some stuff to get excited about, I think.
Yeah, I think speculation is always the best part because we can always talk about things that'll never come, but nobody's gonna call us on our bullshit ever.
Haven't been called yet.
We're just bourbon bloggers, right?
We try to make it really clear which of those was what we knew about it and what we didn't know about it. So kind of identify that in the beginning and then in each of the summaries. So
we don't have
take that for what it is.
Yeah, we're like weathermen. So if we're wrong, who really cares? You just happen to carry around an umbrella the rest of the day.
Yeah, 50% chance.
All right, so Blake, you chimed in there. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody in the round, or all of people that are listening.
Yep. So I'm Blake from Bourboner, the Cal Ripken of the Bourbon Community Roundtables. I'm pretty sure I'm the only member who hasn't missed a single one. So the Cal
Well,
Ripken,
it's
the
kind of not
Brett
fair 'cause
Favre,
Kenny schedules it
journeyman
around his schedule.
But Cal Ripken wasn't a tight end, though, was he?
Yeah. Former
So he gets to
NFL
be-
tight end, Blake
To be
Reber.
Cal
from
Ripken
Germany.
and an NFL tight
Yeah.
end. So
I've
gets
lived
everything.
quite a life. What can I say? No, bourboner.com. You can find me Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you're listening to this, you probably have one of those social media outlets, so check it out.
And
Kenny
Brian,
Bourbon.
wrap it up for us.
all right, this is Brian from Sippin' Corn. You can find me mostly on Twitter at Sippin' Corn, and I spend my Januaries getting rid of partial bottles. And you got to clear the way for maybe a Four Roses spring release and all the other releases you're going to get. So I've got a Warehouse ME Four Roses, and I was one of those crazy people saying that ME had that great run of OBSK and OESK about 2-3 years ago, and this is one of my last. So I'll be sad when it's gone.
So I mean, let's talk about this for a second, because that is something that was I think it was a group phenomenon for at least a solid 3 months running, where people were just going crazy over those ME warehouses. I mean, did anybody else have an opportunity to try any of those bottles? I really honestly wasn't hunting for them, but I'd be interested to see your all's take.
Yeah, so I actually got it right here. Hold on.
How convenient.
Isn't that convenient?
I think this was So the second, this was first or second Bourboner pick I did was an OE or OBSK, but then I had an OESK, and they were both ME 25 1D. Go to Sippin' Corn if you want to find out what it all means and all the different things. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of like it was definitely some good bourbon, but to me it felt like a little bit of people trying to create a hype around. There was definitely some good barrels, but I don't know if just one corner of the warehouse actually produces that many better barrels. I think there's a lot of other factors, but it's kind of a cool thing to track some of those down. I mean, shoot, I picked up a few of them, so I'm just as much of a sucker as anyone else.
So before we start talking about our barrel pick, I kind of want to focus on that, because I've actually never done a barrel pick at Four Roses before. So do they do kind of like what we did at Buffalo Trace, where they roll out pretty much a lot of the same barrels that were they were distilled all on the same day and put in the barrel, or are they pulling stuff from 9 different places and you just got to go in blind and figure it out?
It's all different, and it's beautiful, and it depends on who you're there with and whether you're getting all 10 recipes or whether you're just getting one barrel. But because there's so many differences between their different recipes, they do them all blind. So you don't know how old any of them are. You don't know what the recipes are, and you just taste 10 of them blind. And a lot of people who go in, like me, thinking I'm K yeast all the way, whether it's B or E, I love the K yeast. Sometimes I'll come out with an OBSV that is on the top and the Ks are a little bit lower. So it's a really good experience to do it at Four Roses.
Yeah, Four Roses has been the best one I've done. The first one I ever went on, they rolled out like 12 barrels for us. We did it with Toddy's Liquor. And like you said, it's blind. You have no idea what you're tasting. And then the last time I went, they only rolled out like 4. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, but no, it's awesome. I think that's all of them are kind of going to that model, how we, they put 4 to 6 barrels out, and, there you go.
Yeah, cool. It is kind of nice to taste them blind. I think that's the best way to do it. And they just have much more, there's not a big difference when you're tasting. Well, there's a big difference, but based on the stats, there's not a big difference when you go to like a Buffalo Trace, whereas you have completely different yeast, some different years, all that kind of stuff whenever it comes to Four Roses. So that is a really fun thing about it.
Yeah, I was about to say, you saying blind wasn't really a big surprise. It's kind of been your MO for the past 3 months now.
Just trying to push that train a little harder. But I'm kind of with Brian there. Last one I did there ended up picking a Q, which I would have never thought I liked a Q. But, hey, at the end of the day, that's what I picked out of the lineup, so we went with it. I didn't want to be like the guy who's like, never mind. Q doesn't look as cool on the bottle, so I'll go with the second one that I liked, which is K or whatever it was.
Maybe one day you'll just do like a mystery. Like I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
Yeah. Just bottle it in a blank bottle.
Yeah, it'll just say like it'll say like just like garble on the side. Anything. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll dive into it. Is a lot of people are well aware that everybody here on the roundtable were actually in Louisville last week for a barrel pick we did at Buffalo Trace. So it was a good time. We got everybody together. All our internet friends here in person finally got to hang out. People
still hungover.
drinking New York sours late in the night. And then my bar made Instagram famous through Breaking Bourbon and Bourboner as well. So that was fun too. But this is one thing that we want to talk about because we are very glad that we could bring this barrel pick to some of our listeners, some of our Patreon supporters. So what I want to do is kind of talk about it a little bit in regards of the process that we sort of went through to kind of give everybody an overview. As we had mentioned already, the way Buffalo Trace does this is they typically roll out when you're there by yourself, anywhere between around 3 to 4 barrels. These 3 to 4 barrels are hand-picked, they're hand-selected, going to the single barrel select program. However, this time, since Blake was kind enough to do this with us, we got to choose not only, well, actually he got to choose, but we got to choose from a total. We got to choose from a total of 6 barrels because we had the opportunity to test against to choose which one's going to be for the round table and which one's going to be just for Bourboner. And then we were actually all going through and tasting them, and we all had different ways we were doing it. I think I might have been in the middle where I would taste something and I would write like, it's okay, or it's good or something. And then I know Nick and Jordan, you had your own way that you were grading barrels. Kind of talk about that because it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was kind of doing a elimination to start. It was as simple as, does it pass or does it fail? Yep. And
I think you looked at my notes and cheated. I had checks.
It was funny. You ended up doing that too. But I mean, there were 2 for me that failed immediately and 4 that passed. I think it was just getting through those initial, because tasting 6 at a time, that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're trying to narrow it down, it is a lot because you're trying to pick the 1, or in this case, we were trying to get to the 2 with Blake's as well. So that was the kind of the initial cut for me, just keeping it really simple.
Congratulations, Bourboner listeners. You got the last 2. That,
you got the ones that everyone crossed off their list. No, I have video somewhere of people say, "Oh, I really like barrel number 4." I'm putting it on every advertisement I get.
That was me. That's trademark.
Yeah. I think Nick nailed it. Right. Very similar. I think no surprise. Me and him usually grade the same way. Started with what one can I automatically eliminate because there was a clear one for me that was just horrible, right? And I think actually that was the one we all decided to eliminate right away, barrel number 6. And we're just going back and forth. All right, I found my worst one. What's the best one, right? And then just narrowing it down so you can clearly say, yep, those 2 are going away. But like Nick said, once we narrowed it down to 4 barrels, that got a lot harder because everyone definitely has unique tastes, unique characteristics, got different notes. And then trying to find that common middle ground. I think we ended up with 2 great picks coming out of this experience. But it was interesting just to get a bunch of people who really love bourbon, but all have very different just tasting profiles and what they taste and things. So it was fun that way.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that it was unanimous, if I remember correctly, that 2 and 6 were out instantly on the first round. And then we all had different tastes for what was going to be the one we liked the most. But Kenny, what do you think about? Remember 6? With one of the first ones out was fantastic barrel proof, but when it was proofed down, that's how we started tasting it. It was awful. I mean, just horrid.
It just killed it. It killed it.
Just horrible. It was not worth drinking. But barrel proof, and what were they, about 135-ish or?
I think less than that. It was around
129. 120.
Yeah, 126 to 129.
It was so good. I mean, I'd buy it nonstop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was interesting. I also think it was interesting the fact that I think we made Susanna, who was our Buffalo Trace liaison that day, she had to, I think, basically go to the thief, I think 3 to 4 times for each barrel for us because we just kept drinking.
A little more.
Yeah, it was funny because we were like, well, we're not going to get to the barrel proof yet because we keep drinking the same 90 cut stuff over and over and over again. But yeah, that's exactly what happened is that we went to number 6. We immediately said no. And we're like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and just drink this one barrel proof. And we're like, oh shit, like what should we get?
Yeah,
I wish we could get this one barrel proof.
We go too bad. It's got to be proofed down. I was calculating we probably drank about a bottle and a half worth of bourbon if you add it all up.
What was she putting in? It was probably 2 ounces per glass.
2 ounces per glass. We started with
2 glasses per barrel, so 12 glasses. Yeah, what's that? That's 484 ounces. So
you don't need to count. You all were drunk.
Yeah.
It was a lot of bourbon before 11 a.m. Let's just
It's funny. So number 6 was actually the very first one that I had. And I tasted it and I was like,
we just came to Kentucky for nothing.
Well, yeah, I thought, man, I normally like Trace, but if all these are going to be like this is going to be a super disappointing barrel pick. Thank God it was just that barrel itself.
Funny thing, I just pulled up my notes and I had notes on everything, and I got to 6 and I put 6 dash and then nothing after that. I don't even need to put anything down because if anybody's trying to vote this one through, it is interesting to see like there's kind of that bar that everyone wants to see on quality, and then everyone's taste kind of splits off from there. Yep. There's a standard of good. And then it's basically personal preference, and I think we all kind of debated on that afterwards, which was interesting.
I think the 4 that we didn't eliminate, I think it really was just down to personal preference.
Yeah,
any of those was acceptable. Yeah, just what you liked, what you didn't like.
So what was interesting for those listening? So these 6 barrels, right, barreled the same day, aged right next to each other. They all went through like they weren't just randomly pulled. They went through Buffalo Trace's own internal committee to say, yeah, these could be sold as single barrels, right? They're good enough. And
they were the rejects from the day before.
Well, yeah, and so exactly right. So we asked Susanna, what's going to happen with number 6? And she said someone's going to end up loving it, which, if that's truly the case, just goes to show you how crazy wild people's palates can be, like varying between each other.
I mean, but they also have several where I think it's like, yeah, just let Harlan Wheatley pick out one of mine, and I'm sure it's just like, what do we got left for him?
Which one has been here since January?
What do we got to get rid of? All right, that one. Good.
Yeah. Okay.
I've wondered on some picks though. I've wondered if they do put a dog barrel in, just so that everyone can think how good the other barrels are.
Ooh,
I mean, I've got nothing to prove that, but I've had that thought because I've been on a bunch of selections where there's a clear dog.
Huh.
But there's a psychology to that too. It makes you make a decision when you're already like, all right, we can eliminate that one. Let's keep moving. It's like, but no distillery is going to want to admit, hey, here's a really crappy barrel.
Here's our worst whiskeys. Let's find it.
The thing that's funny, too, is the one we ultimately picked. I remember looking at Kenny's after first round, and the one we picked, it said F no. And then we did it blind, and he picked it, so it's fun.
It really was. I mean, for me, I don't know, like I don't have the great tasting notes like Blake does. I mean, I was just going through, and I'm not as I guess as easy as just to put a checkbox or an X over it. But I do remember, I think it was either 2 was either the first or second one I tried, and it just didn't do anything for me. It didn't have any kind of that spice or anything that was like really, because put it this way, like I had an idea like going into it and thinking like, this is what I want to find. And none of those really
the night before that threw you off those first 2.
Yeah, maybe it was I drank too much the night before, but I mean, it really does. Like I go into it, and
it seemed like you felt good that morning.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I texted all of you and I said the last thing I feel like doing right now is drinking bourbon.
I pull into the distillery. Kenny's taking a photo of the entrance, and he looks at me. He's like, I'm so hungover. I can't do this or something like that. I was like, oh God.
I think you were worried that we weren't even up yet, Kenny. You were like, no one's responding to me. You guys know where we're going.
But to his credit, as soon as Kenny took his first sip, it was like
He was back.
flipping a light switch, and he was on.
Fight fire was
Denzel on flight. Yep.
Yeah, but back to the tasting note thing and the pass fail thing. I think for me, I wasn't looking for a specific group of flavors or anything like that. It was as simple as what's my favorite one.
Yeah.
And for that, I didn't really feel like I needed tasting notes to do that more process of elimination. Just keep eliminating till I feel like I've chosen the one that stands up against the others to keep it that simple.
I like Nick's style. I think tasting notes are bullshit. There's no way you all taste all these intricacies, but you just drink what you like.
Well, describing afterwards, though.
But
you want to
it's
describe it after.
Yeah, it's like cues in my head so I can remember what I was tasting there. It's like, oh, okay, that's how it differentiated. Those things may not even be there at all, but that's how I remember them just to defend tasting notes. But the interesting thing was when we came down to the two, it was like, all right, this is to us a really good Buffalo Trace pick, and then this one is a unique barrel pick. I don't remember which one we actually ended up going with, but it was interesting how much difference just the barrel can make in the flavor profile of a whiskey, because you think every other variable or every other thing is constant. It's distilled on the same day, basically next to each other, so it's just the wood is the only difference. So
and I'm wondering who switched when we went blind too. I know just mentioned Kenny's notes there. Early on though, that was probably a note from early on. Did anybody remember if they picked the one that they thought they liked, or if they switched when we went blind?
I picked 3 from the get-go, and then we picked 3. That was my initial favorite.
That was 3. The one we ended up picking was not one that I liked initially. I mean, it wasn't the worst, but it was just one that I was so on. But when we went blind, it ended up being the best sip at that moment.
At that point of the tasting, I'm pretty sure I just took them both as a shot. And held my hand up. I was like, oh, what are we doing? Okay, I'll take
Now he's trying to downplay the bourbon community. Now he's trying to lift the bourboner pick.
I have it all on camera. We can go back and see who liked what.
So
it's on video. It will be on video at perfectpourtv.com in the future. So make sure you keep your eyes out for that, and I'm sure we'll all let you know. But just to kind of go and talk about what Brian had said, everybody knows Wade Woodard. He's a pretty prolific consumer advocate. He's also started a blog at tatertalk.com, but he also had an article out there that said, what's the difference between a store pick and a group pick? And so this is technically what you would call a group pick, where everybody kind of went together, and we got the opportunity to taste it and actually choose the barrel. Versus a store pick, which sometimes you will see, and it has that sticker that says selected by Harlan Wheatley, Master Distiller. And it can be, and this is what he pointed out in his article, exactly what Brian said, that they just go and they say, just go grab them, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? So it does have some validity, I think. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that, ours is way more valuable.
Yeah. I mean,
just drop it and mark it up there now.
It's whiskey of the year.
It's a really good point, because a lot of times retailers get barrels because it's cheaper, and not as much these days, but it used to be where they could, get a case or get a whole barrel. If they knew they were going to sell through it in a year, they might as well save, $10 to $15 on a case, because they were going to sell through it. So it just made sense. Whereas we're going
they can sell it higher,
really focused. Really focused on the taste. They can bump the price up a few dollars and save money. It's a win for a store. So if you're buying store picks, you got to really trust who is picking it out.
Absolutely.
And never always ask first. If they say, oh, well, we let the master distiller do the work, and he tastes through, and I'll pass.
Barrel 6.
You got barrels.
I think we've all seen enough
winner right there for the tasting committee. We got to get rid of this garbage.
Yeah.
So
Buffalo Trace is hiring for tasting committee, I think we would all say we'll help them out.
if you're a retailer too, depending what your goal is, at the end of the day, they're moving volume. So if they're doing pick after pick after pick throughout the year, this is going to burn out a little bit. And it depends, how interested are the people who are doing the pick and picking something good versus just getting something with, we picked this on the label. So you got to do your research and talk to the people who actually picked it if you're going to put validity into, whether or not that's going to be a special barrel or not. Just because it has a sticker on it doesn't necessarily mean it's special. It's a single barrel. But
unless it's one of our stickers,
how did it arrive?
The Bourbon Community Roundtable sticker, that means it's a gold standard, folks.
Yeah, it's a
gold
good
wax.
Yeah.
It's a good
Not
point,
dripping.
Nick, because sorry. I'll say it's a good point because I've done picks with liquor stores, and you find those like unicorn profiles, or you're like, wow, this is really outstanding. He's like, yeah, but that's for you whiskey geeks. I need to sell this to everybody. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
right.
fair enough. So
It's a good point.
Cool deal. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of move on to something new to talk about. So I'd already mentioned Wade and his blog at tatertalk.com, but this is the part of the podcast where we get into a segment we call speculation, which could also potentially be a new orphan barrel name in the future. But as we had talked about that, Wade is a very well-known consumer advocate. He's also a whiskey law sleuth. And this is when he had created a new article called Diageo Done Screwed Up. And he talked about the Crown Royal Bourbon Mash bill that we'd actually discussed in the last roundtable. And he went through and discovered that they are actually in violation by calling this something from bourbon. He refers to 27 CFR 5.22 I/1. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer like Brian. I don't know what this all means. But he said this is the smoking gun, and it states that the word bourbon shall not be used to describe any whiskey or any whiskey-based distilled spirits not produced in the United States. This is exactly what Diageo did. They used bourbon to describe a product that was produced in Canada. Now, he got a response back from Diageo, and the TTB actually initially approved this, but they later asked Diageo to surrender it. This is after quite some time. But since Diageo already had a product ready to go with launch events, packaging, promotional material, etc., they came to agreement with the TTB that they could actually use this label for a period of 1 year. So can anyone take some guesses as to what this product might be called after the 1 year is over?
speculation.
Well, can we also get a thing where it's like, hey, you're free to do illegal things if it's just for 1 year?
Yeah, right.
Can I get that same
I'll sign up for that.
yeah.
It's a good gig if you can get it.
Right. Which is just seems so funny to me. Like, how does an agency that's supposed to regulate it not say, oh, nope, actually, we screwed up or whatever it is?
Oh, we see that. I mean,
Yeah, haven't you seen,
we see that all the time, more with smaller craft distilleries. The three guys breaking bourbon talk about this all the time. We'll call out distilleries too, and they usually stop talking to us afterwards. But
surprisingly,
a lot of stuff goes through them, so it really makes you wonder if they don't care, if the volume's just too high, if there's like one guy and he's overwhelmed, a girl. I don't know.
have you ever heard a lobbyist?
Well, there's also that too.
They're like, get this through. Come on. Just you got a shit ton of stock. Come on.
Just turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
So did Crown Royal say that they're gonna continue to keep the product on the market under a different name, or they'll just take Bourbon Mash out of it and call it like, I don't know, Crown Royal Double Black or something?
That actually wasn't in a part of the article, so I do not have any kind of guesses to either what they are going to call it or if it's just going to be taken off the market. But I would highly, highly doubt they would just take it off the market.
And if you're the brand manager though for this brand, for this specific bourbon, right? Well, quote unquote bourbon. What a great gig you got now. If it sells hot for a year, you just get a different name, right? Yeah. If it tanks, it's not my fault it tanked. You know what? We just couldn't sell it anymore. You're good either way with this job.
I heard they were going to call it the Pursuit Edition.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Crown Royal Pursuit. There we go.
Barely legal.
No, that sounds like it should be shut down. Even.
I know. I was like, we're touching some fine lines there. Alex Coffin did mention. He says, if it's unelected, you're kind of unaccountable. Which, as you guys from Breaking just pointed out, that this stuff happens all the time. They approve labels, they put stuff on the website, and then all of a sudden, whiskey geeks, they get a hair up their ass and they want to go and call people out. But in your opinion,
how much do you think they should care to uphold the law here? Because it's not like anybody's going to jail over this. It's not like anybody is. Let's put it this way: nobody's dying. Nobody's like. There's no real harm that's coming out of this, except for people that want to prove their knowledge base, maybe. So, what kind of talk about what you think about that?
I think at the end of the day, if you're going to have a rule that you're not going to enforce, just eliminate the rule. If you're going to have a rule that says you can't say age less than 4 years, and then you let everybody, it's an obvious thing, and then you let everybody roll out a label that says age less than 4 years, what are the guys supposed to do who are aged for 18 months when they're competing with somebody who says aged less than 4 years and they're getting approved? They're going to look at that and say, well, I'm going to roll my whiskey out the same way because it's not fair competitively, right? And then before you know it, everyone's doing the same thing. So I don't know. I'm not, as far as the rules go, I'm not saying this should be the rule or that should be the rule, but if you're going to have a rule, you might as well enforce it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Rules are not made for big boys. The big companies always can get around rules. It's like the little guys that get hit by them. But it reminds me of like the NCAA. Like you get caught cheating and you're banned like five scholarships in the future. It's not like the people that did it. So like the coaches go unscathed, they get new jobs, whatever. So unless you work at U of L.
Yeah. See, and I want to throw my answer out before Brian starts talking because he's going to have the actual
the right answer.
Yeah, the right answer. But these things are in place to protect brands. Bourbon is a protected name because it means something to consumers. So if you're just going to let people use it, what's the point? It's the same thing with like trademarks and all that kind of stuff. You get a distillery like Wilderness Trace who has to change their name to Wilderness Trail because Buffalo Trace goes after them. So it's protected. So I think it should be enforced. And unfortunately, a lot of times the little guys lose out on that, but that's a part of it. You can't just say, all right, if you're over a certain dollar amount in sales, you're allowed to break the law or bend the law. No, the rules are the rules. So,
and a lot of it too has to, you have to recall where this industry initially came from way back when, right? When distilling first took place, there's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of lying, initial way back when rules were put in place to protect the consumer and to stop distilleries from cheating, basically, right? Like bottle and bond law, everything else that came after it. So even though nowadays, a little bit more trust, a little bit more transparency, thanks to the way information travels, they're still there really at the end of the day to protect the consumer. So if they're not doing that, I agree, like what Nick said, get rid of the rules and have a free for all. But that's a shame because I think the industry worked really hard to get to this point, to get that protection. Whether they wanted to or not, it's here now. And I think it's done really well over the years. So if you take that away, you're just, taking a step back.
We're not going to let the Canadians come in. Steal our bourbon.
I was about to say the same thing. It's like, technically, it's a Canadian.
We talking about that, buddy?
They took our bourbon.
Brian, drop that knowledge hammer on us.
Lost all your Canadian listeners.
The South Park memes could keep going from here.
Brian, the rules are pretty complex. So it's harder for I forget who said it. It's the small guy whose job is not only to run the still, but also to do label approvals and marketing and everything else. There's no way that guy can keep up really, but Diageo can keep up with the rules. And a lot of the other labels that have snuck through that have said straight when it's not a straight whiskey. And they've gotten through because there's just not the capacity at TTB and in COLA approval to really look at everything. And then an additional downside to that is Maker's Mark got sued for saying handmade on its label when it's not. It's to a large part mechanized. But they then use the TTB approval as support for why they get to say handmade. And there's a lot of reasons they should be able to say handmade whiskey on it. But so they end up using TTB approval as a defense when someone sues them. And that's the part that really gets me is you've got an agency that's not doing what they need to do. Maybe it's because they don't have the manpower to do it. But the fact is they're not minding the store like they should be. So I don't think I have a different answer than anyone else other than to say it's it's important to protect the labels, and it's important to protect the dogs and everything else. But it's important to comply with these rules, and I agree with everyone. You gotta have support. You gotta have enforcement.
Yeah, I think Jordan brought up a really good point. The fact that these laws were actually made a long, long time ago to help protect the consumer, and I think it was. I mean, you could have said it as much as probably maybe a little bit over 3 years ago, and then for that maybe a span of 2.5 decades, that didn't really matter, right? It was the same 8 people making the same product. Like it wasn't really going to change that much. And then now all of a sudden we had this new resurgence of craft distillers. We had this new resurgence of everybody trying to find this little niche in the market of how they can make their product stand out for somebody else. And so maybe this is high time that they should really be paying a lot more attention to it, because this is now the focus is more on them now than it has been in the past 20 years, right? So I think that's Jordan brought up a really good point with that too. So does anybody have anything else to add on this before we go hit up the next topic?
I think I would just add a question to that, and if anybody in the chat on YouTube to respond to this too. But how much of that responsibility should rest on us as the consumers and the writers and the bloggers and the podcasters and everyone else? Are they just taking the approach of we're simply going to enforce the handful of things we enforce, and the rest of it we're going to leave to you guys to bring lawsuits, bring publications, approach producers, do whatever? Is that a fair balance to say that, part of it rests on the consumer to do their research and know what they're buying? Or should it be TTB and the government's responsibility to essentially control all that and put the resources there?
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point-of-sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
How much of that responsibility should rest on us as the consumers and the writers and the bloggers and the podcasters and everyone else? Are they just taking the approach of we're simply going to enforce the handful of things we enforce, and the rest of it we're going to leave to you guys to bring lawsuits, bring publications, approach producers, do whatever? Is that a fair balance to say that, part of it rests on the consumer to do their research and know what they're buying? Or should it be TTB and the government's responsibility to essentially control all that and put the resources there?
I mean, somebody should just hire Wade over there and just pay him enough that he's happy, and then maybe this will never happen again, right? I mean, if there's one person that knows all the rules, it's got to be him. So if somebody's looking to fill a position at TTB, like, it should be pretty easy to know who to go to. But to answer your question, not to make a light of the matter, I think you're right. I think, like I said, I think the government needs to have a little bit more of a bit of a spotlight on them. And then the problem is that as was kind of put in the chat earlier, is that really nobody's holding anybody accountable. Nobody's holding TTB accountable. Everybody thinks that the people that are pushing forth the labels are the ones that have to be the ones accountable. In fact, it's these people that do the checks and balances are the ones that should probably be held accountable, that just let these things slide underneath the radar, right? I mean, if I could think of a good analogy, I would. But I mean, it's just one of those things where you need to understand that the people that are in charge of making sure that what gets approved, it actually gets that rubber stamp at the end of the day. Like, I'm sure it's just not like one person doing this. I'm sure it goes through at least like 2 to 3 or 4 layers of people that look over.
I would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer, but
Yeah.
Well, in the enforcement of, there's going to be technical violations of TTB regulations, and there's going to be big violations. There's going to be Templeton calling it straight and not disclosing that they have an additive. And I think that's where you get into outside enforcement. And that's why there was a class action lawsuit and a huge settlement, both monetary for reimbursement for people who bought the bottle, and they had to change the label. They had to put Indiana on it, and they couldn't call it straight anymore. So yeah. I think that's where true enforcement comes in. When it's something, I mean, arguably here, the name of the brand was Crown Royal Bourbon Mash Blended Canadian Whiskey. So is a consumer really going to think that they're drinking bourbon, or that they're buying bourbon? Probably not. I mean, you're an idiot if you do. I mean, it's clearly a blended Canadian whiskey.
That should be TTB enough. Wow.
It's a violation. They shouldn't have said bourbon mash on it. And period. Next paragraph, though, it's blended Canadian whiskey, and no one's going to be misled.
But that should be something that the TTB has right in front of them. That they check it off and say, nope, go back. You have to do something different.
Yeah. That's right. You can't call
as far as the straight, and what people are really putting in the bottles, at the end of the day, we can't expect the TTB is going to be able to be at every location everywhere and figure out exactly what's going in. And they have the label in front of them, though, and they should know the guidebook. They should know the rules, and they should be able to say when there's a rule that's broken, no, you can't do that label.
Yep.
I mean, that's what we depend on them to do, and then where there's deeper violations, well, that's up to us, that's up to the consumers and, the people out there on the ground, so to speak.
Especially when it's a big brand as Crown Royal. I mean, Jesus, it's like, I can understand a small brand getting it through, but somebody like them, come on, that's crazy.
Yeah. I think this is one more thing on this topic, and going back to whose responsibility is it? Don't, for all of us on this, especially all the different groups on this roundtable, and then also everyone out there who either has a bourbon website or a blog or anything else, I think no matter what you write and put out there, you'd be surprised how much your voice matters. This was a few years ago, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, was that like Colorado whiskey? What? Anyways, turns out there was a lawsuit. Breckenridge, there we go.
Yeah.
We're like Googling breaking bourbon one day, and all of a sudden we see her quoted in this lawsuit. And they're pulling information, using us in part of their argument as what we had posted and what we had found out about this, this distillery. And that actually went towards the prosecution, which was wild. But so
that's what Josh from Red, White, and Bourbon. He sent us the message. He said, "Are you guys going to get subpoenaed?" And he said that link to it. It's like, Josh, I think you're digging deep, man.
Yeah, I think but that is a good lesson learned, right? So if you see something, this sounds really stupid, but if you see something, say something, put it out there, right? Because you never know. Like your voice may actually end up helping change something that's being done illegally.
Cool. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I think we beat this one to death. There were a few good comments in here. Kevin Brinkerhoff said, just put the poll on straight bourbon and vote against it. You could probably do the same thing with Reddit. If it's got enough upvotes, then it's probably good to pass TTB. And then Chris Haynes said, remember that half the consumers already believe Crown is bourbon anyway.
Touche.
Yep. Okay,
it's on bourbon menus at airports all across the country.
Oh, it's true. Along with Jack Daniels, but we won't get into that yet. We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into that.
Again in the Bourboner group. Blake, make that a rule.
So let's go ahead and move on. The So we had talked about it last time as a rumor. It's been officially confirmed. OKI has announced the end of their line with the bunch of the 12-year barrels that are currently being dumped soon. And however, people are starting to clean out shelves of OKI all around the country, or at least in where it's distributed. In addition, just the standard old Scout, just a single barrel, 7, 8, 9 years, that's being cleared out to left and right. And these aren't even store picks. This is just the regular bourbon. I want to kind of get a gauge on what you all think. Is it January and people are just getting stir crazy, or is there really panic mode being set in right now?
Oh, maybe they're just nervous that the new stuff's not going to be as good as the MGP stuff. I don't know. Because it's a really good product, you know.
It is good.
They're putting out right now. And so you're like, well, might as well get all we can before they screw it up with their new shit. No,
it's a little bit of, it's just a little bit of having or getting something now that you can't have in the future, right? I guarantee you we're going to see the same exact thing happen, even though this can sound stupid, with Four Roses Yellow, right? People are going to be like, oh, I want the old yellow label with the screw cap because it's not going to be yellow anymore. Who knows what it's going to be like? So let me go clear out the yellow. It's cheap. It's the same thing that's happening right now.
Yeah,
just people want what they're not going to be able to get later.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Blake, you're on mute, buddy.
I wish I didn't buy any more Elijah Craig 12-year.
Yeah.
No,
kind of loaded up on
I'm
that.
kidding. Thinking back, I mean, reality is how many people are sitting there saying, you know, I bought enough of that. I was good to not buy any more at $25. I mean, I think most of us can say that it made sense at that point to buy a bunch of it when you knew it wasn't going to be that anymore. Why not? You know, it was low cost. It was accessible. It's going to be different, you know, or it was different after. So it's just that as things run out, you want to have it before it's gone.
People love scarcity.
Yep.
They do.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, and I think that we just saw like another new label come from Kentucky Owl today. Well, it's under the Kentucky Owl umbrella, which was Old Carter, I believe is what it was called.
Stole the umbrella.
But I mean, when I think about it, there's so much new stuff that's coming to the market. I mean, and we are at the very beginning of what we're going to see is a flood of stuff that's going to be coming. And it just seems, in my opinion, that people are going to panic mode of just because something is reaching their end of life that they got to get it. And it's like, why? Like, there's going to be so much stuff that's going to be coming out that, sure, you're going to have, you spent $70, $80, $90 on each one of these bottles. But at the end of the day, like, that's cool. Like, have one or two, but man, you don't need to buy 7. Like, it's nothing that's going to not be there in the future. Like, MGP is not slowing down production. I can guarantee you that, right? So there's going to be even more labels and more brands that are going to be coming out here in the very near future. And as Alex Coffin just said, it's FOMO. It's FOMO all over again.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it always comes
but
back to
Kenny,
FOMO.
what about the lack of the old growth oak barrels?
Ooh.
I mean, it's not the same barrels, right?
I guess. I mean,
I'm kidding.
yeah, okay, good. Because I was about to say, I was like, we've had people on before that, and they say that the barrels that go, or like the wood that goes into the barrels is like 1/1000th of the wood that's actually used on a per annum basis of, even like the housing market, right? Like, it's really not that much.
There's always
Can you
something.
hear me now?
Yeah,
but
this
this wood is special though.
Right.
There's special
The
wood.
old wood back in the day, 8 years ago, they made the wood better.
But
I was going to
it's
say,
like-
you're all with the sexual innuendos tonight here, Nick. You know that, right? With that, you got the fairly legal. I mean,
Coming off really creepy in the round table.
I wonder if that'll be the next Orphan Barrel or Diageo stick, right? Like, all right, this was the forest where the barrels used to come from, or the wood used to come from for the barrels that went to Stitzel Weller. So, we're going to be reusing this wood from this forest, and people just start hoarding that bourbon.
The funny thing is to me is how many people still buy into like the Blade and Bow Stitzel Weller. It's Blade and Bow, right?
Right.
I've had people tell me, yeah, this is Blade and Bow. It's from this distillery that shut down. Last barrels they ever had. Mike, I'm just going to let this one fly because I don't have to explain this one, but they are going to milk that one, which I guess, hey, they got the trademark. Why not? So I'm sure they'll throw out as much marketing as they can at the Blade and Bow name with Stitzelweller.
Kenny,
Can you blame them?
just
No.
I mean,
I've used
here's
it.
the thing that
sure.
that it's kind of weird about
Here.
that, right? Is that sure, everybody that's listening to this, everybody that's on this roundtable, everybody that's in the chat, they all know what Stitzelweller is.
Yeah.
But the greater 90% of the bourbon consumers out there, do they think they have any clue? I mean, they just started learning about, or even started drinking bourbon 6 months or a year ago. Like they're not going to know what Stitzelweller is, maybe ever, or unless all of a sudden they start getting the itch to go join the Bourbon or Facebook group and then start following podcasts and reading blogs, right? Like I don't see the big thing that maybe most consumers aren't going to really care about that.
Yeah. Which I made this point, but I realized I was on mute with the Crown Royal thing. And, the majority of people who buy the Crown Royal Bourbon Mash could care less whether or not it's actually bourbon or one way or the other. And that's, it's fun for us to talk about it, but we are the very small minority of the whiskey drinking. It's $1 billion industry. We probably make up at least a few million of that buying power, but it's a very small section, and so most people could care less. They just want something that's cool and they can show off to their friends. So
Bruce and Bourbon had a pretty good comment that says, I am surprised that a tree age has not been stated yet on a label as a marketing tool.
Oh, nice.
I mean,
that is true.
I gotta agree with that.
200-year-old
That's a really
Nice.
good point.
I mean, put it this way. I think anybody knows that at this point, Buffalo Trace is the one that's probably doing the more experimentation than anybody else. So they probably have something, because I know they're using crazy things like they're using redwoods. They're using, I forget, some other kind of like Bengal tiger kind of wood. I'm not
Looks from all over the place. Yeah, no, they're doing some really cool wood
they're
experiments.
doing a lot of crazy stuff over there. But yeah, it's
Nick knows all about those crazy wood experiments.
yeah, he does.
No comment.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on to a new topic, because there's a few more things that I kind of want to get to before we end this. Actually, while we're also on this, I think this is a good discussion as we're in panic mode and talking about the current state of the market. There was a good quote that came back on January 29th in one of the forums, and they said that Four Roses 125th is valued almost $100 less on the secondary, more than the recent Al Young's Four Roses 50th anniversary bottle. However, the Four Roses 125th is an older bottle. More bottles have easily been more consumed by now, 2013 versus 2017. However, most people think it's a superior whiskey, yet it is valued less than the Four Roses Al Young bottle. Now, is that because that the new influx of people getting into this just don't care about older whiskey, or just new people just want to get the newest juice or the hottest juice that's on the market today? Like, so what are your thoughts?
I think it comes down to popularity. I think it's a big popularity contest when you're thinking about secondary value. Demand's going to drive it. I think it's a pretty relatively small group of people that's buying and a relatively small group of people that's selling. So think about 20, 30, 40 years from now, all the whiskeys we have right now, what are people going to want? They're going to want the things they know the names of. So how many whiskeys today, how many of their names are going to survive through those generations over the years where there's still some kind of demand for it? And it probably just comes down to that, simply that a lot of people out there don't know what 125th is. So you just don't have as many people that are looking for it and trying to buy it.
As silly as this may be, I honestly think the shape of that bottle and how unique it is, I kid you not, I think that plays in the perception for a lot of people that this is a cool Art Deco type bottle. It's a throwback. It looks like nothing else out there, must be like nothing else out there, thus it's better. Not saying that by no means is that, what it
That
should
does
be.
make it unique though, and visually too.
Yeah, I think that's weird. I mean, 125th is a great bourbon, don't get me wrong. Great bourbon.
And Blake, where did those two end up on your blind tasting? Or was Al Young's 50th part of it? I can't remember.
It was, I'm going to have to look. 125th did rank higher than Al Young's blind. I'll get you the official.
It's okay. What you can do with memory.
It did come in higher than the, let's see. So 125 came in third. Al Young's came in fourth. They're about a quarter point apart in the blind tasting. So really neck and neck. I mean, I'd call that almost a tie, but I mean, I think it really is a part of a lot of people don't realize what the 125 is. And so that means there's less buyers, less demand. Al Young's did win the Bourboner Whiskey of the Year, so I'd say that plays a huge market influence.
You're a market maker.
I just went and bought a ton of Al Youngs and rigged the whole holding process. No, but I mean, I think it really is. That is a really cool bottle. There's no way around it, but it was good. It was very good. Got a lot of attention. So I think everyone wants the new and hottest thing. So that was it. So I think that kind of plays the biggest part in it.
Yeah. I think the hype train is really there. And it is funny because you do see this, that, I mean, you see some of like the legendary, William LaRue Wellers, not to say the Weller 19, but there's some really good old William LaRue Wellers that don't necessarily like have, you can get the 2017. Maybe you just pay like an extra $100 and then you'll have something that's maybe years and years ahead better, right? So I don't know. It is kind of crazy how newcomers to this are kind of masked to the degree that they don't necessarily know like what are the best ones, the previous releases or anything like that, and they just kind of see that Blake has cornered the market on Al Young. So it is what it is. All right, so we'll move on to another one. So we see it all the time in the forums. It's in Bourboner. It's in our local Facebook groups of hunting groups and everything like that. And I see it all the time that people are complaining about finding Blantons. And I don't know about me. I'm getting sick of it. It just about as much as I get sick of people trying to find and hunt down Weller Special Reserve. But it's because for me, Blanton's just doesn't do it anymore. Just straight Blantons. And I want to kind of get your idea. Do you all think like maybe BT is manufacturing this, or do you really think it is a scarcity thing?
Yes. I've thought all along that's their number one play, scarcity. I feel like they do it intentionally, but I could be wrong. I have no idea what their stocks are, but they do a great job at it to create demand. But it's funny. Last week, my cousin she was like, my husband wants 2 bottles of Blanton's for his birthday. I can't find it anywhere. And I was like, really? I was like, I hadn't bought it in 5 or 6 years. And I was like, no way. And I went to a store and they're like, yeah, we can't get Blanton's anymore. And I'm like, are you shitting me? But so I had to go to my honey hole to get him 2 bottles. But yeah, I can't believe that it's allocated like that. That's just nuts to me.
I honestly think it's more on the distributor than BT. Now I could be wrong, but I think the distributor is just holding a ton back because there is no way it's that allocated. Or no way they don't have enough of it to go around. And, stores are saying, well, we're on, we get 2 bottles per month now or something like that. I'm like, there, because I had the same thing. I tried to buy some for somebody for Christmas and like, yeah, we can't find it anywhere. We go all over. I'm like, no, you just go into any store, you grab Blanton's. It's $55, $60. Right. And it really is. I was in Total Wine probably 3 weeks ago and overhear some guy saying to the store manager, well, y'all got any of that Blanton's? Well, can't find it anywhere. And I'm thinking, is that really what everyone is going for now? So, I mean, honestly, I think it's more of the distributor just manufacturing some scarcity on that and putting it on allocation. And BT Buffalo Trace probably has plays a role on that as well. But it's a little crazy to me because I would probably drink regular Buffalo Trace at $24, and I would definitely drink the Bourbon Community Roundtable Buffalo Trace pick over Blanton's any day because it's 2 years older and it tastes a whole lot better. So
yeah,
well, I think
it's the new Elmer, by the way. It's the new Elmer.
Tying on to that point too, what Blake just said, right? I do believe there's a little bit of artificial scarcity being created by everyone involved. The thing to remember too, like when this bourbon was out before, you could always find Blanton's for a reason too. It's because it's $55, $60. And don't get me wrong, to us and to a lot of people listening on this podcast are like, oh, wow, that's not that much for bourbon because we're just so used to spending a ton. But for the average consumer, and when they walk into a store, Like even when people ask me for recommendations, like, well, what do you think for like $25 to like $35, right? Like once they break that $40 barrier, they really don't want to spend much more than that. So for them, like the average consumer who does buy the majority of stuff, they don't want to spend 55, 60. So now when it starts disappearing, you're like, what? Everyone just started like gladly spending a lot more on bourbon? I don't think so.
That's a pretty good take on it. Yeah, I mean,
that is good.
Yeah, it's for me. It's when I see people that are in the local groups and they're trying to chase after Blantons. I'm like, guys, come on, it's fucking Blantons, guys. Like, let's take a step back. Yeah, I was like, let's just go do your own homework. I mean,
it's got a horse on it. Nothing.
It's a great bottle and it's got a horse on it, and horses sell, but don't wait for it. Don't hunt for it. So much better. You can buy 2 bottles of something a lot better instead of getting the Blantons.
I mean, Buffalo Trace is big. It's just as big as not as big as Beam they're pretty close though to Heaven Hill and Beam. I just don't believe
all those
they
aging
have this scarcity.
They're going to be a lot bigger, that's for sure. So that's makes you think.
Well, it makes me wonder though too, because it does seem like certain areas don't have it, and other areas do. I don't think the distribution on Blanton's was enormous in the first place. I don't know that they were ready for people to be hunting it per se, but I do wonder if they do make it scarce in some areas to get people talking and get people kind of hunting for it. And I think it's important to make a distinction too, like we were talking about before, where there's bottles that are, I guess you'd say, hunt worthy, and then there's bottles that they're good at their price, but don't spend a lot more for them. Don't spend hours and days,
don't
trying
camp
to find,
out for them.
Blanton's is great if you can find it and it's $55-$60, but if you got to hunt and you got to buy more and you got to work liquor stores, and pay $80-$90 for it, that's a whole different scenario. And I think that, I like Elmore T. Lee too, but I think that one for me kind of jumped the shark when people kind of went so crazy for it. That it became more in demand, I think, than it should have been, and paying so much for it just became ridiculous. And I think Weller Special Reserve got pulled up into, the Weller 12 kind of tornado of, this is really good for the price. And I think people got confused over what was what, and that Weller name that's great that they've got 3 bottles there. And I think there is some confusion, which I think works well for the brand, but at the end of the day, it's not worth going crazy over. And Weller 12 is good, but, it's not worth paying an insane amount of money for either.
No,
we're never going to be able to.
And Nick, what's your consistency there? Sorry, Ryan. Nick's consistency there. Every brand he mentioned comes from Buffalo Trace.
And that's the scarcity play. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then that's the scarcity play that you guys have been talking about. I mean, it's consistency. They're the ones who are doing this scarcity play, and I think it's false scarcity.
I think be the last bourbon pursuit or bourbon roundtable barrel pick we'll get from Buffalo.
Yeah.
So the value just went up.
Actually, this one's going to be really scarce, though.
Yeah.
We like Bo and Susanna. They'll keep us as friends, right? So hopefully we'll keep us as an in there. I want to go ahead and do a solid for the rest of the bourbon community, because these are the people that actually listen and follow this. That if you really love Blanton's and you really love it, then you need to do yourself a favor. And Jordan's had one behind his back the entire time, but you've got to go get yourself a bottle of straight from the barrel.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
It is easily the best thing that you can buy. I mean, if you're going to pay $90 at a retail store for somebody's jacking it up, pay the extra $30 and just have it shipped to your door of getting it straight from the barrel to be able to do that. Or pay attention, get on mastermalt.com. Every once in a while, they're going to have Blanton straight from the barrel available, and you can go and you can buy it. It'll be $125, $135, whatever it is, shipped to your door. It's worth every penny of it. And so that is the only Blanton's now that does anything for me. So that's a hunting tip for everybody that is wanting to learn more about it and how to get your hands on something good at it's not a cheap price by any means, $100+ for a bottle of bourbon, but in my opinion, it's kind of hard to you put that against some other $100 bottles of bourbon, it knocks out of the park.
We actually
my enjoyment level is right there with that one. I feel like that definitely justifies the price.
We did an article back on BTAC alternatives for those, like for anyone who can't find BTAC bottles and, common ones you might be able to find. But then we also threw in Blanton straight from the barrel as if there were a 6 BTAC, this would be it. And most people have a shot at getting it too. So you like Blanton's? Also, do you like BTAC but can't find it? Try a bottle of this. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not going to get to our last question tonight because we are already running over our time. We've already hit our hour, so we're going to save that for the next one. So, fellas, I want to say thank you again for joining on the roundtable tonight. And before we start closing it out, Ryan, this is a pretty good discussion tonight. We've got a lot of good things that are coming in regards to the podcast for new releases. I mean, I think we've got pretty much everything up to about episode 150. This will actually be a episode 135 when this comes out. So we've got a lot of good stuff that's coming. So what? Any kind of closing thoughts on your end?
I just that barrel pick was super fun, and just a recommendation to people that are listening or in the bourbon community. Don't just talk to these guys virtually. Try to meet up with them. That was so much fun. Like, we've hung out, online and talked in chat boards and on these hangouts, and it was so fun to just meet you all in person. Like, oh, Brian's like 7 foot tall. No, but that would be my closing advice: is take it from the virtual world to the real world. That was a lot of fun.
That's right.
Yeah, that was.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go around. Breaking, you go first.
All right. So Nick with Breaking Bourbon, one of the 3 guys behind the website. Check us out online at breakingbourbon.com and on social media at Breaking Bourbon. If you are interested in Breaking Bourbon glasses, Glencairns, or reusable tasting sheets, or getting release calendar updates to your email every time we put one up on the site. And just put a big one up today, so check it out if you haven't yet. But be sure to check us out on Patreon. That's Breaking Bourbon, or patreon.com/Breaking Bourbon.
Yeah, and this is Jordan. Echo everything Nick said, and also if you're interested in new whiskey releases for 2018, we talked about it. Hopefully, we'll get on the horn with Kenny and Ryan and talk a little bit more in depth. But a lot of new good stuff coming out in 2018, so everyone should be pretty excited about that. Start saving your pennies.
Don't blow them all. Mastermalt.com, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Brian, you go ahead.
All right, this is Brian with Sippin' Corn. You can find me mostly on Twitter at Sippin' Corn. Had a great time at the barrel pick, and from this point on, I'm going to start plugging my book, which I'm hoping for a fall release. It's called Bourbon Justice. It's been at the publisher since October. I'm supposed to get some sort of editor's proof back here in the next 30 days, and things are rolling. So just in time for holiday shopping, and cheers to everybody, and look forward to the next one.
We know what every bourbon lover wants for Christmas, right?
That's right. It's called Bourbon Justice.
A good book. That's not written by Fred Minnick.
It might be a limited edition too.
Ooh, limited edition.
Ooh. Old
Can I
world
get a
paper.
signed copy?
That's
you
right.
have like pieces of a barrel like as the cover or something? Like what's
Well, and some people just won't open it, and it'll be worth more.
Oh, that's a smart move. Yeah, you don't want to crease those pages. It's like a
right.
Superman
That's right.
comic, right?
So you buy 2, you read one, you keep one on the shelf.
You bunker the other one.
Yeah, you bunker the other one. I get royalties on both. It's a win-win.
Kenny's going to get a bookshelf at Costco now.
Oh, that's hilarious. Blake, go ahead and wrap it up, man.
I am Blake from Bourboner.com. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, BOURBONR.com. Definitely would like to kind of reiterate what everyone said about the bourbon tasting we did. It was a lot of fun getting together with everyone. So, meet up, drink in person. Don't just be internet friends. A lot of fun can be had. So.
Absolutely. And like I said, it was a good time hanging out with everybody. staying up till I don't know, were we up till midnight or later than that, drinking New York sours? I honestly don't remember.
I woke up.
Sours
Trying to
were
make it sound a little bit
fantastic, too.
cooler past midnight. Like, man, were we up till midnight? 4 a.m.
That sounded really lame.
It really did, especially because Louisville's one of the only cities where bars actually stay open until 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we got an Uber at midnight, so we're cool. We made it.
we made it.
By the time I got back to my hotel and realized I'd booked at the wrong hotel, it was at least 12:30. So
That was a good story. I think
Pretty wild night.
you need to tell that to everybody before we sign off here. Tell everybody that story.
Okay, yeah. So I refuse to do things ahead of time or correctly. So on my flight to Kentucky, I get on Hotels Tonight. No, it was Priceline, and to book my hotel, Jordan and Nick said, "Hey, we're staying at this hotel downtown. You can ride with us." So I'm like, "All right, stay there. Book a room. I'm all set." Get to the hotel that night after we'd been out, drinking at Kenny's bar, drinking at dinner, drinking at a bar afterwards. Go to check in. The guy's like, yeah, I don't have your name here. Could it be under a different name? Like, hold on, let me check my confirmation. Apparently, there's 2 Alofs in Louisville. Who would ever thought there was 2 Alofs?
We're big time
And
now.
I
We're big time.
booked at the wrong one. Luckily, booked by Priceline. They let me cancel for free and get the same rate at that hotel. So shout out to Aloft. The
New sponsor for the community roundtable.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
We got to get some money from them. I'll take that all day, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Just to kind of wrap it up, thank you all again. It was a pleasure meeting everybody, all the internet friends coming in and actually hanging out for a little bit. The guys from Breaking Bourbon had mentioned that they've got an email distribution. We actually just started email distribution too. Cool. So if you want to get on that, you can actually get every single new episode that comes out is going to be beamed directly to your inbox. You can just go to bourbonpursuit.com, scroll down a little bit, and there's going to be a subscribe button down there. And you can go ahead, punch in your email address. You're going to be on the listserv, and every new episode that comes out, it's going to come right to you. Haven't really figured out another way if we want to push out new information. Maybe we'll, maybe we won't. I don't know. We just started it today, so we'll
figure it out. We're having a brainstorming session tomorrow, so
yes, we have things to.
We'll get the whiteboard out and start hashing it out.
4 bourbons later.
Yes, exactly. That's what happens. That what happens on a Friday afternoon. But also make sure you follow all these guys on all the social media channels. Also follow us, Bourbon Pursuit, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you've got show suggestions, fan mail, hate mail, whatever it is, you can send us it at theduo, THEDUO, at bourbonpursuit.com. And with that, thanks you again. Thank you everybody that joined us live. We had around 55 viewers live. We've had a lot of good chat going on. And with that, we will see everybody next week.